Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Angela Mammel and I'll be the TA for this class. And today we're going over our Waiting for Godot projects, going over the abstract questions, designs, and the visual morgue. So I first want to start off by saying that the way that I'm doing this presentation is not the way that you have to do this presentation. I answered all these abstract questions by including this collage of images. However, you can just answer them by including a few short sentences, whatever you feel like is most helpful. I thought that through including images for you guys, you could sort of see the types of images that you can include in your later on visual morgue. So that's why I did mine the way that I did it. I also did each thumbnail sketch I sort of had relating to one abstract question. However, that's not what you have to do either. You can answer all the abstract questions first and then go through and formulate your research based on all of them and draw 3 thumbnail sketches based on all of that information that you gained. So the first abstract question that I am answering is, if you had to pick a place to produce this play, where would you select? And I think it'd be interesting to produce this play in a parking lot or parking garage, especially one that is abandoned. I'm inspired by the grays and the sort of concrete jungle aspect of especially the parking garage. I also like the idea of the fact that this parking garage is a place where life used to exist but no longer does. I feel like that these sort of ideas and images tie into the theme of mental confusion in the show. So this is my first thumbnail sketch, and to do these thumbnail sketches, you just need to take out a scrap piece of paper and very loosely trace the Balch Playhouse ground plan, which you can find on Moodle. And what you're supposed to do for these is just draw various shapes and images to show us where you want each set piece to go on the stage. It obviously doesn't have to be detailed. We just want to see the spatial ideas of your set through this. And for mine, I have a dead tree, I have a patch of grass, I have a sign and a lamppost and traffic cone, and then I have these parking spaces that are supposed to be painted onto the floor. Second question that I chose was, if this play were a work of art, what would it look like? And I was inspired by this painting on the left by Salvador Dali called The Persistence of Memory. I liked the clock because I feel like time and the confusion that it might bring is a very consistent theme throughout the show, and I was inspired by that. I also liked the sort of constructivist shapes going on in the images on the right, and that's why I chose those. This is my second thumbnail sketch. I sort of combine both of those ideas to create a graveyard. The dead tree, I want to use the constructivist images to sort of construct one out of wood, play around with the angles and make it look cool. And the broken clock tower, I was inspired by the Salvador Dali image. And so I just have this dead tree, the clock tower, a bunch of gravestones. This is a pile of rocks, the road that Potts when Lucky will walk on, and then I have a cross statue here. Third abstract question I chose was, if you were to hand this play to a blind person, what would it feel like to them? And I thought it would feel like a gear, because gears have patterns, especially when you turn them around in your hands. And I feel like the structure of this play has a pattern, right? The 2 main characters sort of go through the same thing every day, where they are waiting for Godot, but they want to leave, but then even if they do make up their minds to leave, they never actually go away. This is my third thumbnail sketch, and this is the one that I decided to do for my final rendering. I have just a bunch of smokestacks here. It's an industrial wasteland. I have a pile of gears and the same dead tree that we've seen in all 3 of my thumbnail sketches. And then on the floor, I have a painting of a gear that I want to sort of symbolize a clock, and I have a road going through it that is supposed to symbolize the hands of the clock. So those are the abstract questions and the thumbnail sketches. We can move on to the visual morgue. So first, when you make your visual morgue, you want to make a concept statement and a metaphor. It's usually either an and/or situation, but you're supposed to do both for the purposes of this project. So I said before that Waiting for Godot is like a steampunk industrial wasteland. I'm inspired by both the combination of the natural and the mechanical, and just the confusion that a sort of wasteland might bring. That's my concept statement. That's what I'm going to always draw back to when I am making this design. The metaphor for my production of Waiting for Godot is a gear, because of the same reasons that I described before, the sort of patterns you can find in them. And this is the visual morgue. As you can see, it's very similar to the way that I answered my abstract questions. I just wanted sort of an example for you guys in order to take inspiration from the abstract questions and the visual morgue. So yeah, I guess the best way to describe this visual morgue is it's a mood board of the show. And you are supposed to look for images that inspire you and bring across what you want to communicate through your production. And yeah, I feel like the most common sites that I used to find images are Pinterest and Tumblr and just Google Images. So whatever you can find, just put something together and make it a mood board of your show. And then when you're presenting these visual morgues, you want to sort of state why you chose each image. So this one, I was inspired by the shape of the tree. I thought it was interesting. I thought I could combine it into my set. This, I liked the idea of the gears within the mind. I thought that this sort of symbolized the idea of what the main characters are going through and their struggles. This industrial wasteland I was also inspired by. I was inspired by the grays and just the absence of pretty much everybody and everything, because I feel like obviously in Waiting for Godot there's really nobody but the two main characters in a long, long way. And this is sort of what I got by looking at that image too. This tree I was inspired by, I liked the metal in it, and I actually ended up using metal in my tree that I built for this production. I also liked the gears for the same reason that I keep mentioning, and just again the sort of coming together of the mechanical and the natural. This last image on the left, I liked it because it reminded me of the part of the show where leaves start to sprout out of the trees. And I think that obviously in a wasteland there isn't very much life there, but I was inspired by just the presence of plant life. And I feel like there is a glimmer of hope in the show, right? And that is sort of what this represents too. The second page of my visual morgue, I have this sort of just like grayscale apartment complex drawing. I was inspired by this blank space and also just like the various shapes of the trees here. I liked the grays of this moon and the skyscape. I thought that it added to the very monochrome look that I wanted my set. Again, here we have just the contrast between the mechanical and the natural. I used a lot of stones and a lot of gears in my set, and that's why I chose this image. I like the bottom right, the imposing nature of this tree, and also just the various like cool shapes that you can see from it, and that's why I chose this picture. The bottom middle is again just another industrial wasteland. I like the grays, I like the patterns in the ground. And Lainey always says to feel like an artist, and I actually tried to sort of emulate some of these patterns and structures in my final design. Again, I like this one because I like the shape of the tree, especially silhouetted against the background. I thought that it was very cool and something that I could take inspiration from. So for my ground plan and my elevation, for the ground plan, you want to do basically just what you did for the thumbnail sketch. However, you want to just very, very basically take measurements, right? So if you look at your ruler, you say that a 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, and you go across and just measure everything and see what you can do. It doesn't have to be perfect because it's such a small like playing space to work off of, but just try to make it look neat and try to measure whatever you can to the best of your ability. Also, what's important to remember when you are designing a show is you want to play off of the playing space that you have, right? This is the proscenium, and you don't want anything really behind it that you don't want in the background of your show because no actors are going to be behind there. The smokestacks I sort of have in the background, which is why they're peeking behind the proscenium, but that's it. And yeah, this is my elevation. This is all the colors that I've chosen, and that's what I got. This pile of gears and stones, like I've mentioned, the dead tree, and sort of the clock-like structure of this road, as well as the patterns that I tried to include in the ground. You can't really see it on camera, but yeah, that's what I've got. And be sure to contact me if you have any questions. Yeah, thank you.